In this lecture, we are going to look at some of the theories that oppose Christian understanding of creation. One biblical theme that was carefully preserved by the church from the 2nd century onwards was the idea of God as the creator. This is the doctrine which has its foundation in the Old Testament, which says that out of nothing, creation ex nihilo, God made the world. This teaching denied the eternity of matter, denied the divinity of the world, and firmly established God's full control over everything. The early church did not draw a distinction between the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. It taught that the Creator God of the Old Testament and the Redeemer God of the New Testament are one and the same. The early church's teaching did not stop people from coming up with theories that oppose Christian doctrine of creation. There are several theories that have been put forth to oppose Christian doctrine of creation even today. The earliest being Gnosticism. A heretical movement known as Gnosticism attacked the biblical idea that God was creator of the world. The movement drew a distinction between the God who is the Redeemer and an inferior deity who created the world. The Gnostics taught that while the Old Testament was concerned with the inferior deity, the New Testament was concerned with the Redeemer God, and that these two were different. A serious debate centered on the question of whether creation was to be regarded as ex nihilo. The Gnostics argued that the world was made out of pre-existent matter, which was shaped into the world in the act of creation. They denied the idea of creation ex nihilo and taught that creation was to be seen as an act of construction on the basis of the material which was already in existence. The Gnostics taught that the existence of evil in the world was therefore to be explained on the basis of the poor quality of the pre-existent material. They taught that the presence of evil in the world is to be ascribed not to God, but to the poor quality of the material from which the world was constructed. However, Christian writers such as Theophilus of Antioch insisted upon the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, and from the 2nd century onwards, this theory became the accepted doctrine within the Christian church. The church has always taught that God the Father is the creator, whose creative expression is seen in the Logos, who is yet co-equal and co-eternal with the Father. The idea of creation ex nihilo was important in the early centuries to establish the sovereignty and transcendence of God, and to distinguish the Christian view of the origin of the world from competing alternatives. Although in the 19th century, church attendance remained at a relatively high level in England, many people were beginning to express a variety of doubts about biblical doctrines which had been cherished for centuries. This was due to discoveries in science. Discoveries in science caused people to question the traditional explanation of world origins. In the long line of distinguished scientists whose researches were raising serious questionings as to whether God had by special acts created the world was Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was born in 1809 and died in 1882. Darwin is generally considered to be the first scientist to have formulated a scientifically respectable theory of evolution. During his study in South America, Darwin observed the way how cows survived during the time of drought. The ordinary cows survived while the short-jawed breed starved to death. His conclusion was that favorable naturally selected variations permitted survival when there was competition for the food supply during scarcity. In 1858, he published a joint book with A. R. Wallace. Its title was On the Tendencies of Species to Form Varieties. His theory of natural selection suggested, number one, a close relationship between species, which led to the conclusion that human beings evolved rather than originated as the result of an act of special creation. Two, that the human race was improving morally as well as physically. Darwin's theory of natural selection was based on the idea that the fittest species survive. In 1859, he produced another book whose title was The Origin of Species. In this book, Darwin tackled the issue of suffering and death. He said, I quote, all that we can do is to keep steadily in mind that each organic being has to struggle for life and to suffer great destruction. When we reflect on this struggle, we may console ourselves with full belief that the war of nature is not incessant, that no fear is felt, that death is generally prompt, and that the vigorous, the healthy, and the happy survive and multiply. These publications played an important role in creating a direct contradiction between the view of Genesis concerning the origins of human beings and the creation of the earth. Darwin's evolution theory has two main parts. Part one, that life has developed over millions of years from a common prototype being. The complex creatures arose from this simple cell. Number two, that evolution takes place through natural selection. Creatures which in the past survived certain environments continue to exist and multiply. Those which were not able failed to multiply and therefore became extinct. We shall continue with this discussion in our part 2.